This is my book review of The 50th Law by Robert Greene, and it's co-authored by 50 Cent. So really what this is Robert Greene pairs up with 50 Cent to kind of use his life as a case study for a lot of these different laws. So if you're not familiar with Robert Greene, what he does is he uses a lot of different historical, facts and analogies of things that have happened in the past to explain certain laws and, truths of human behavior and how people act, right? So what we're essentially doing is using 50 Cent's life for this book, and that's the primary motivator. I think it's interesting because we're kind of drawing primarily from one source, and it does get a little repetitive because Robert Greene kind of like overemphasizes certain parts. So for example, like he'll say like, oh, he'll describe, let's say 50 Cent's upbringing, and then he'll keep referencing certain parts and he'll re-explain them, even though like if you read from the beginning, you would already know. But other than that, there's a lot of big things that I took away, and I thought it was pretty useful. And I'm, as always, a really big fan of Robert Greene. So the first thing I think that was really like important that you kind of get away from this is that with like 50 Cent is from early age he was able to overcome his fear of kind of what other people are thinking of him, and he was able to learn to stop caring, right, in a good way, in a sense of like not allowing other people's opinions of him to stop him from doing something that he knows is good for himself. And that, I think, if you don't take anything away from the book, that is like the biggest shift I think that can really fundamentally change the trajectory of your life. Because if you don't do that, you'll forever be living in a shell of somebody else, doing what somebody else wants you to do, doing what other people think is right for you, and never actually figuring out what you want. And just another big takeaway I had from this was that like our world today wants to distract us from reality and live constantly in our delusional fantasies, in the sense like we don't want to come to terms with the hard truth of reality because it's a difficult pill to swallow, right? It's very, very challenging. There's not a lot of answers sometimes, and usually it just means you have to do a lot of hard work and sacrifice to kind of turn the situation around. So but like if we just indulge in those fantasies, you realize that we're not going to accomplish anything, and that we'll never become anything either. And so that can't be the answer. So this has to be like a wake-up call for you to realize like, hey, I can't be just living my delusions and ignoring the reality and not working hard and not trying to move my life in a certain direction, because eventually it will catch up with you. So one big thing with 50 Cent is that like he came from a very, scrappy kind of background. And so one big takeaway from this book is that only by reducing yourself down to the bare basics of only relying on yourself can you establish a rock solid foundation upon which to build your future upon. So it's like, a lot of times you may think you can rely on other people, and it depends. Some people may be pretty reliable, some may not be, right? And so as such, if you want to make sure that you are maximally positioned to, succeed and improve, you need to put probably most of the reliance on yourself, because when you rely on other people, now it starts to create this chain of dependencies that doesn't always play out like how you want it. Okay, events in life just happen and on their own are extremely emotionless. I think this is something that we should all kind of learn to understand, in the sense that like we can all see the same events in different ways. And that means that what really like is important is not necessarily the event itself, but your perception of that event, right? So it's up to us to assign whether something is called good or bad, right? Is it like a good event or is it a bad event, right? And this means we have the power to reshape our thinking to force bad things to become good things by seeing constraints and setbacks as opportunities. And this is exactly what 50 Cent does. He's about to release his first major album after he's decided to stop like selling drugs and stuff and being in the streets, and to try to transition into rapping and for like his music career. And he's sitting in his car and he gets shot 9 times in the face. And so for him, this could have been definitely seen as a bad thing, right? But he decides to flip on his head, in the sense that it's like, of course it's not a good thing, right? Of course it would have been better if he hadn't got shot, right? Because then, his record label then just drops him after that, because they determine he's too violent and he has too many past, kind of connections, which are bad. And he really has to start from ground zero. But if you understand that the event has already happened and there's nothing you can do about it, it's better to actually view it in a positive light, because that will, in a sense, encourage you to work harder. Because if you view it in a negative light, then it just makes you think, oh, like I wish this didn't happen to me and I wish everything was perfect. And in that case, right, if you wish everything was perfect, then you're just going to not really want to work very hard because now you're no longer that motivated to keep working that hard, right? So we need to make, we need to make bad things into good things because this pushes us to work to improve our situation. If you just focus on the bad, you probably won't work very hard. And so as such, one way to do this was he kind of used the fact that the Bullets had changed his voice into more raspy, and he kind of made his first album, he kind of changed it a bit to be much more like outspoken, much more against the system, and just really, really raw. And that was something actually that a lot of fans resonated with and kind of led to his, stardom in a sense. So of course, things could have played out a million different ways, but the best case scenario after something has already bad has happened to you is to just view it as something that could be good in the long term. We're not saying it's good right now, but it can train you to see different opportunities and things that happen in a different light. Okay, here's another big takeaway. By acting soft and giving into life, by being too nice, you are begging people to come walk all over you and take advantage of you. Don't think that you are some moral knight in shining armor and that people will reward you for kind of, being soft and nice. Because the truth of the matter is, when you're soft and nice, people don't realize you are being soft and nice. They just think that's who you are, right? And so therefore, we're not going to reward somebody for being something that we don't really even think that they're being, in the sense that we just think that's who they are. Like, for example, if you always gave out free food, people would just think you always give out free food. They wouldn't see it necessarily as you being nice. Now, if you gave out free food once in a while, they would realize that that's not your normal behavior and therefore you're being nice. So this is something I think a lot of people don't understand. They think that, oh, if I do something nice, everybody should realize it's nice. No, they might just think it's who you are. And that will cause them to not really appreciate it very much, which is just the truth of the matter. The harsh reality of life is that if you don't make people feel pain, they will never be grateful for the pleasure or good things you bring and will take them for granted and only ask for more and more. And I think this was very, very true in a lot of different situations, especially negotiation, right? It's like if you are trying to make somebody, let's say this. This is a very common example. Imagine you're working for a boss, right? And you've done your hard work all the time, you're always turning in on time, all this stuff, and you feel like you deserve a promotion, you go to the boss says, I don't think you deserve it. Why? Because the boss doesn't value your work in the sense that he just expects it from you, right? If, however, let's do a different situation. Let's say you start off, maybe you're kind of a little bit lazier or something, right? Or at least you're not doing the best of everything, right? You're just doing a very mediocre job. And then all of a sudden you start putting in some effort and you start putting in some noticeable effort and you start improving, start doing stuff more on time, and you kind of make some comments to your boss will start to notice, right? And now if you're going to go ask for a promotion, your boss may actually say yes because they actually notice your behavior different and the behavior change, right? So the truth of the matter is you wouldn't appreciate ice cream if you had it every single day, right? You only appreciate things because they are, in a sense, different or rare or something. So if you come to somebody and they know you as one thing and you're always that one thing, that's all they're going to expect of you. And they're not even going to know if you're, let's say, trying extra hard behind the scenes. They're not going to, reward you for any of that. So the only way to make them reward you is to take away some of that and make them, in a sense, feel the pain. So for that boss, feel the pain of you, not doing the work completely on time. I'm not saying don't do it, but it's just you don't have to always do it early. You could do it maybe closer to the deadline, so the boss is kind of questioning, is he going to finish it? And those kind of moments actually make the boss more appreciative of the times when you did turn in things early. If you keep turning things in early all the time, your boss will never appreciate it, right? Or maybe they will, but it's very hard to control that. There are paradoxes of human nature you must master and become used to, and you must learn that human nature is all a bunch of paradoxes. For example, the more time you spend with someone, the less they value you. You would think that the more time you spend with them, the more they learn about you and the more they value you, but that's not always how it works. We want what we cannot have. We don't want what we already have. We will want these things even if they bring about our own destruction. And so if you can come to terms with these kind of paradoxes, you can realize the key to unlocking human nature, in the sense that a lot of things about humans are very contradictory. And once you understand that, then you can start to actually see how people will be affected by certain actions you take and have more insight into that before they happen. Also, a really big thing for today's generation is boredom is key to honing focus and building invaluable skills as well as patience towards mastery. everybody now is never bored because you're just scrolling. And the truth is, like, the more you scroll, the worse your attention span becomes, and you'll never be able to, read a book like this. In fact, I don't even know how many of you have picked up a book in like the last, month, but that's where the knowledge is, because it's not even just about books, but it's like, if you want to become a master at anything, it takes a lot of time without results. And you have to just accept that. And when you don't have boredom and you don't have focus and you don't have long attention spans, you can't do those things and you can't achieve them. And if you're fine with that, that's fine. But just realize that that's the key to, having a competitive advantage going forward. So really like this book. It was really short, but I think it did a good job. It was a little repetitive, but it was cool also just to see 50 Cent's life, I think, and Robert Greene's kind of connections there. If you have any other questions, put them in the comments. Make sure you subscribe for more.